Simply irresistible.
And while Michael Jackson was noticeably missing, Pepsi did revive a controversial commercial. Back in 1989, Pepsi paid Madonna $5 million to endorse Pepsi and debut her new song, Like a Prayer, in a commercial. That commercial aired during the 1989 Grammy Awards. The day after the Pepsi commercial aired, Madonna released her own music video for Like a Prayer. It contained certain scenes that provoked major pushback from Christian groups, and even the Vatican condemned it. That uproar caused Pepsi to yank the commercial after only 2 airings, and Madonna still got to keep the $5 million. But 34 years later, Pepsi aired the commercial again during the MTV Awards.
Go ahead. Make a wish.
This time, it didn't stir any controversy. And this time, at the end of the commercial, words on the screen from Pepsi said, "Cheers to disrupting the status quo." Madonna posted a message on social media saying she was glad Pepsi finally realized the genius of our culture.
I'd like to build the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honey bees and snow-white turtle doves.
That is the late, great Bill Backer singing the song he co-wrote for the world's most famous Coke commercial. It may just be the most revived, most resuscitated commercial of all time. It was also a daring commercial for 1971, showing a Swedish person standing next to a Nigerian standing next to a Chinese person. And that may be one of the main reasons it keeps getting remade and reimagined. That message of unity gets more urgent with every passing year. Backer's other campaign for Miller Lite was also a landmark because Tastes Great, Less Filling literally invented the light beer category. These campaigns and the others we've talked about today have one thing in common. They haven't worn out their welcome. Recent research has proven that many good ads don't suffer much wear out and are pulled off the air while they were still performing exceptionally well. In the advertising business, a rule of thumb is that a certain amount of repetition is required for wear in, and too much repetition creates wear out. But that new research proves that good advertising has a lifespan that greatly outlives bad advertising. Of course, the court of public opinion may want to appeal that ruling when you're under the influence. I'm Terry O'Reilly. This episode was recorded in the Tearstream Airstream mobile recording studio. Producer, Debbie O'Reilly. Sound engineer, Jeff Devine. Research, Allison Pinches. Under the Influence theme by Ari Posner and Ian Lefevre. Tunes provided by APM Music. Follow me on social at Terry O Influence. And if you'd like to read next week's fun fact, just go to apostrophepodcasts.ca and follow the prompts. See you next week.
Hi, this is Guy McBride from Orillia, Ontario.
Fun fact.
The Coke Hilltop jingle became a top 10 song in the Billboard charts and sold 12 million copies.
This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg.
My name is John Cullen, and I want to tell you a story. It's a story about a scandal, broken relationships, gossip, rumors, money, corporate rivalry, and curling. It's the story of Broomgate, how a single broom, yes, a broom, turned friends into foes and almost killed the 500-year-old sport of curling.
It was a year I'd like to forget.
Broomgate, available now wherever you get your podcasts.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC...
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 12 degrees with mostly sunny skies. We do have a rainfall warning for tonight. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. A former member of the Winnipeg Police Board wants to set the record straight as to why he resigned. Yesterday, a motion was put forward revoking Kyle Mason's membership on the board. He says it was very upsetting and stressed it was his decision to leave. Mason says he made the decision after mixing up the dates for his MPI insurance renewal and getting a ticket for driving without insurance.
And after some reflection, I decided it would be best to resign. I didn't want this to be a distraction from the work at the police board or a distraction from my personal life, so I decided back on May 3rd to resign.
Mason was upset by the way the motion was worded, but says the mayor told him this morning the wording would change to reflect that he resigned. The mayor's office confirms it will be changed, and CBC has asked the chair of the police board for comment. Winnipeg police are looking for a suspect after a carjacking that ended up with the car crashing into the side of the CBC building. It happened on Tuesday afternoon. Investigators say the owner of the vehicle went into a business on Portage Avenue, leaving his wife and their 18-year-old in the car. A stranger then jumped into the car and tried to drive off. Police say the car then hit the side of the building on Yonge Street that I'm sitting in right now. The female passenger was assaulted on the ground. She was not seriously hurt. The suspect ran off, and police, again, are looking for that suspect. The first of 68 dogs seized last week in a Fort Richmond home are up for adoption. The Winnipeg Humane Society says 5 of the dogs are healthy and old enough for adoption. They're between 1 and 5 years old. The society says there are now actually 79 dogs in total because 11 puppies were born since the group was taken in. Those moms and pups are in foster care right now, and police found those dogs in deplorable conditions during a well-being call. To Ottawa now.
We want a citizenship to be fair, accessible, with clear and transparent rules.
That's Immigration Minister Mark Miller saying Ottawa will extend citizenship rights to some children born outside of the country. The Conservative government changed the law in 2009. Under that legislation, Canadian parents who were born abroad could not pass down their citizenship unless their child was born in Canada. Last year, the Ontario Superior Court ruled that system created 2 classes of Canadians and was unconstitutional. Quebec police say Robert Pickton is in a medically induced coma and is on life support. The convicted serial killer was attacked 4 days ago in a Quebec prison by another inmate. The 74-year-old is serving a life sentence for the murder of 6 women who disappeared in the early 2000s from Vancouver's downtown east side. The remains, or DNA, of 33 women were found on Pickton's pig farm in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. The United States Department of Justice is planning a takedown of Ticketmaster.
The Justice Department filed this lawsuit on behalf of fans who should be able to go to concerts without a monopoly standing in their way.
Attorney General Merrick Garland has announced details of a sweeping antitrust lawsuit against Ticketmaster and its owner, Live Nation. Garland accuses them of snuffing out competition and driving up prices for fans.
Live Nation relies on unlawful, anti-competitive conduct to exercise its monopolistic control over the live events industry in the United States and over the fans, artists, independent promoters, and venues that power the industry.
Garland is calling for the breakup of Live Nation and Ticketmaster. In a statement, Live Nation calls the allegations baseless. The company has long been the target of controversy and outrage from fans, including its recent handling of ticket sales for the Taylor Swift concert tour. Louisville police have disciplined the officer involved in an altercation with Scotty Scheffler. The top PGA golfer was briefly arrested outside a tournament venue last week. He was accused of failing to stop at the scene of an accident. Louisville Police Chief Jacqueline Gwynn Villaroel says the arresting officer did have a body cam, but he did not turn it on.
Detective Gillis should have turned on his body-worn camera, but did not. His failure to do so is a violation of the LMPD policy on uniforms and equipment.
However, multiple charges laid against Scheffler remain standing, including assault of a police officer. Scheffler says it was all a big misunderstanding. The city of Toronto has been formally awarded a WNBA franchise. The league made the official announcement this morning at a gala event in Toronto. It was attended by numerous dignitaries, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Proud to be part of a country that uplifts women in sport, whether it's Canadian soccer legend and my cousin Christine Sinclair, all the great players of the PWHL, or all the incredible basketball players we're celebrating today. Cities across Canada have said loudly and clearly, we are and we want to be a destination for women in sports.
As CBC News reported earlier this month, the franchise will begin play in 2026. As for the team's nickname, it is yet to be announced. The franchise will be operated by Larry Tenenbaum, who is the chairman and minority owner of Maple Leafs Sports and Entertainment. In Winnipeg, partly cloudy with rain starting tonight and a high of 13 degrees. You're listening to CBC.
Hello, my friends. Thank you for joining us today for Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on your CBC Listen app or on your YouTube channel. Just search CBC Manitoba. My name, by the way, is Janet Stewart. It is boating season, and it's also Safe Boating Awareness Week. How confident are you that all the boaters out on Manitoba's lakes and rivers know the rules and are following them? We want to hear your stories and concerns about our boating safety in our province today after the 12:30 news. We begin today with concerns about safety in Grassy Narrows. Scientists say they found the reason mercury levels in fish there have plateaued instead of continuing to drop. A new study from the University of Western Ontario shows that effluent still being dumped into the northwestern Ontario River, called English Wabagon, is creating an even more toxic compound than the mercury that we've known for generations is there. That mercury has impacted generations of people living in Grassy Narrows First Nation, a community near the Ontario-Manitoba border, and also Wasabasimong Independent Nation. The research published this morning shows how the discharge of wastewater from the Dryden paper mill combined with existing mercury creates high levels of something called methyl mercury. Methyl mercury accumulates more strongly than other forms of mercury in organisms like fish, presenting a greater health risk if that fish is consumed. Here's Brian Branford, a biology professor at the University of Western Ontario, speaking this morning.
The concentrations of sulfate that we have near the mill, 30 is actually a conservative concentration. Our average from the summer was about 65, and at times it can achieve 100 milligrams per liter. 2 milligrams per liter, which is only a little bit higher than the river is alone, still produced almost 50% more methylmercury with mill effluent, with just half a milligram per liter more of sulfate. And those are concentrations that we see at the outflow of Ball Lake, which is something on the order of 180 kilometers downstream, right? It's quite a ways downstream. So these concentrations are actually relevant for the entire upstream downstream system coming from the mill downstream. So the mill operations today are making the methylmercury contamination problem worse in the Wabagoon River and delaying the recovery of mercury contamination in fish in that system. It's the mill effluent that is currently being discharged that is adding the other two key ingredients to the reaction that are stimulating the formation of methylmercury in the river. There's no evidence of any other source of sulfate. This is a river that is obviously heavily studied these days with a lot of chemistry data. Fish methylmercury levels are ultimately proportional to the amount of methylmercury that's in the environment in which they live, right? So if we have 3 times more methylmercury in the environment, fish will ultimately have 3 times more methylmercury in their body because that's the only mercury that accumulates in those organisms. So we can connect the dots, right? We can draw the line directly between mill effluent stimulating methylation, increasing the amount of methylmercury in the environment, increasing methylmercury in fish. So the corollary is also true. If we reduce the amount of sulfate in organic matter, take those 2 ingredients out of the reaction, then mercury levels in fish will come down. This doesn't completely resolve the problem. This is still a heavily mercury contaminated environment, and even the background levels of methylmercury production will result in concentrations that are much higher than we would expect. However, if we dial down the heat on that reaction by reducing sulfate and organic matter inputs to the river, then fish mercury levels will come down. And there's some evidence from other experiments that have been done in North America that that timeline might be on the order of years, as opposed to decades of recovery if we're talking about a more traditional remediation strategy, which will ultimately need to be forthcoming as well. This is a study that has been released as a technical report to Chief and Council of Grassy Narrows, as well as to the English Wabigoon Rivers Remediation Panel, which is in charge of administering the $85 million trust that the Wynne government set up to address mercury contamination in this river. So this report is to the community and to that panel. We've elected to release this data today because of the urgency of this situation. Every minute that there is additional discharge of this sulfate and organic matter into this river, more methylmercury is being formed. And this is something that I hope that this science can inform some decision making about this mechanism, which could lead to the reduction of mercury in fish in quite a rapid time frame.
That's Brian Branford. He's a biology professor at the University of Western Ontario. He was speaking this morning. Rudy Turtle is chief of Grassy Narrows First Nation. I spoke with him about an hour ago after the study's findings were released. First of all, sir, your reaction to the report today?
Well, it's very disappointing, and it's not good at all.
The study did find that if the effluent was diverted away from the river system, if the effluent stopped going into the river now, that the level of mercury in fish would drop quite rapidly. Are you optimistic that that effluent will stop going into the river system?
No, not really. We've been told before, and we've been assured before that, the practices are going to be safer, and apparently they're not.
The new owners, you mean, Dryden Fiber Canada?
Well, like in the past, just 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, we were told that what's going into the river is safe, but it's not.
And now there's a new owner. Dryden Fiber Canada took over the mill from Domtar in August of last year. Its website says it's going to have a vision of making things better for the community. What have you heard from the company, the new owners?
I haven't heard anything yet. I haven't met with them.
In almost a year?
Yeah, well, personally, I haven't heard from them.
Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't.
Kind of surprises me because this seems like such an urgent issue for you and the community.
Yes, it is. It's been an ongoing issue for the last 50 years. It seems like people don't take it seriously.
But it is very serious. It impacts 90% of the people in Grassy Narrows. They have some symptoms of mercury poisoning.
Yes, it does, and that's why we've been making our public appeals, and that's why we've been telling people that our people are poisoned and continue to be poisoned, and the report, has confirmed our suspicions that river continues to be poisoned, and it's making the mercury even worse.
What does the mercury poison do to somebody's quality of life?
Well, it affects their nervous system, and it also affects other health issues on their bodies. It's not a good thing overall, I have to say.
How often do people in your community still eat fish from the river?
Almost every day there's someone eating fish.
Why?
Even in wintertime.
I understand that that would be a traditional food source, but given that you've known about the mercury poisoning for so long, why do you think people still eat out of the river?
Because it's an easy food source, and it's cheap, it's accessible, and it also, in terms of like economics, like a lot of our people don't have the resources or the money to go fish somewhere else, so it's much easier to go downriver and fish downriver. Like, I mean, it's easier to go down the hill, get on your boat, and start fishing rather than having to travel somewhere else.
Your community hoped to have construction of a mercury care home begin 2 years ago. This would be a place where people could live in and be cared for, and also it would treat outpatients for mercury poisoning. The construction hasn't happened yet. What are the new timelines?
Well, we are hoping to start this July. We have finally secured most of the funding that we need, and so we are hoping to start this July, and it's going to take maybe 2 or 3 years to get the building finished.
What kind of difference do you think it will make for, again, quality of life?
Well, it will help the people that are sick and the people that are, really affected by the mercury. It will give them a place to live and give them a place where they'll be cared for. And it's just not about the care, but it's also, I think, we will continue to have further studies, and doctors will be there monitoring how mercury affects the human body.
I'm just, forgive my silence, sir, but it just seems like, an experiment on your people. It just feels there should be something more that can be done to help you.
Yeah, there should be more, but unfortunately, things are so slow and it takes time, and it's been hard to get both levels of government to listen, and it's a very slow process. This thing should have been dealt with 50 years ago, right from the start, but it's just been very slow.
Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Rudy Turtle is chief of Grassy Narrows First Nation. Diane Lowen is communications and engagement coordinator for Dryden Fibre Canada, the new owners of the Dryden paper mill. I've reached out to her for a response and have not yet heard back.
Your local news at your fingertips.
CBC News has a local news app made for your phone or tablet.
So don't waste time scrolling for the local stories you want. Just download the app to get the information that matters to you, when it happens,
and how you want it.
Another way to get your local news. The CBC News app. Download it today.
It is 12:18 and you are listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Janet Stewart. Southern Manitoba is sitting under a rainfall warning. So it's Environment Canada and Climate Change says that in the next few days the rain will be very heavy in southern Manitoba tonight through Saturday afternoon. There's also rain in the forecast for Thompson. In Winnipeg, that rain will start near midnight tonight. In Brandon, showers could begin anytime now. Currently at the Brandon Airport, it's mostly cloudy, but there is a 30% chance of showers starting around noon. Rain is in the forecast for both Brandon and Winnipeg tomorrow. Brandon has a better chance of sunshine for Saturday and 17 degrees, where Winnipeg will still be into rain. In Thompson, we've got clouds for today, a mix of sun and cloud for tomorrow, and a chance of showers, a good chance, 60% for your Saturday. Riley Leachuk will join us after the 12:30 news with more on your forecast. And then it'll be time for our Radio Noon call-in conversation. Today we're talking about safe boating. We have a couple of experts joining us to talk about boating safety, and we want to hear your stories. What have you seen on the water, and how safe do you feel on Manitoba's lakes and waterways? Join our call-in conversation starting today after the 12:30 news and weather. A musical couple is bringing the rich tradition of Chinese opera to the prairies. David Ling and Jenny Lee had been staging opera performances in Regina, Saskatchewan for decades, but the pandemic brought those to a halt. Now, they've brought back those rehearsals, and opera lovers are embracing the music. CBC's Florence Wang brings us more.
A Chinese princess unhappy with her husband captivates an audience in Saskatchewan. And behind the scenes, a real-life husband and wife celebrate the moment. Making this Chinese opera come to life was a dream that began many years earlier. When David Ling was just a boy growing up in China, his mom played piano, his dad the violin, and he attended a school where his talent was quickly recognized. Ling and his wife Jenny Lee moved to Canada in 1981, and they brought with them their love of Chinese culture and opera. And Ling landed a job fixing instruments at a Regina music store. At their house, the couple has a collection of more than 100 costumes. Lee models one with embroidered phoenixes, which represent royalty and power. Through these costumes, the couple can trace their musical journey in Regina. In the 80s, they began receiving requests to perform at Chinese cultural events, including Mosaic Festival and Lunar New Year. Then in 1991, the Regina Chinese Benevolent Society asked them to form a group to teach people Chinese opera. Winnie Chung was one of the original members. She grew up watching Chinese operas with her parents in Hong Kong, but admits she knew little about how to sing opera.
We just try to find the hobby you like, that is just for the healthy life, and sing a song, you will forget about trouble. Life is tough, so got to move on, but music will help you.
The opera group gained momentum and popularity. Up to 100 people put on 3-hour-long productions based on Chinese folklore. These elaborate costumes, along with sets and a live orchestra, would teleport people back to ancient China. The operas were halted by the pandemic. But Ling was determined to keep it going. Now they've regrouped. It's a relief for those who count on the group for social interaction. And for Jenny Lee and David Ling, who see Chinese opera as being a connection to their past, they hope to carry forward into the future. Florence Huang in Regina.
Thank you, Florence. May is Asian Heritage Month. As we speak, high schoolers are gathered at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, exploring Asian exhibits and learning about Asian culture. And don't forget that this weekend on Saturday, if you're in Winnipeg, you can head to the Forks and enjoy the Asian Canadian Showcase by Taste of Asia food trip. Enjoy some beautiful Asian foods on the weekend.
Sing and sway to R&B on Marvin's Room. Move and groove to the rhythm of Saturday Night Jazz. Crest with the best next wave of Indigenous music on Reclaimed. Savor the flavor of the Francophone world on C'est Formidable. And treasure the arias and encores on Tempo Weekends. Saturday night means music on CBC Radio 1 and on the CBC Listen app.
It is 12:25, and now we've got a tune for night owls who might be listening. This is Manitoba band Leaf Rapids and their song, Night Shift.
I wake the birds, I send them off into their day. I make sure the sun's up, making the rounds, and anyway, after the night shift, I turn the stars off one by one. I leave the moon, she's a wily satellite, loving the darkness, sneaking out into the light. Even the night shift is bound to catch a glimpse of sun. Wednesday morning will always be Tuesday night to me. Wednesday morning will always be Tuesday night to me. My quiet industry, in the hours that memories keep, the fox and owl agree. The darkest hours are not for sleep. Here on the night shift, we tug the days in one by one. Wednesday morning will always be Tuesday night to me. Wednesday morning will always
That is Leaf Rapids with the song Night Shift, composed by Joanna Miller, who local music fans will know as a drummer and clearly a singer and whistler and songwriter for many local bands. Still ahead on Radio Noon, it's time for our call-in conversation. We're going to open the phone lines right now, so call in with your stories about boating and any concerns you might have. We've got two safety experts joining us this afternoon who can answer your questions, but we want to know, how safe do you feel on Manitoba waterways, our beautiful lakes and rivers? Do boaters ever make you nervous? Have you ever had any close calls? The phone lines will open after the 12:30 news. Right now, it is 12:30.
This is CBC News. In Winnipeg, we're at 12 degrees with partly cloudy skies. We have a rainfall warning for tonight. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. Kyle Mason says it was his decision to resign from the Winnipeg Police Board. Yesterday, a motion was introduced at Executive Policy Committee, Executive Police Committee, saying his membership had been revoked, Kyle Mason's membership. But Mason says he resigned on May 3rd. He says earlier this year he mixed up his MPI renewal dates and received a ticket. Mason says after reflection, he decided to leave the board so as not to be a distraction. He says the motion saying his membership was revoked was upsetting.
Winnipeg is not, a huge metropolis, so word gets around, and it was a very upsetting day because inaccurate information being spread around can cause different perceptions, rumors.
Mason says he's spoken to the mayor, who says he will change the wording of the motion to reflect his resignation. The mayor's office confirms it will make the change, and CBC has asked the chair of the police board for comment. The first of 68 dogs seized last week in a Fort Richmond home are now up for adoption. The Winnipeg Humane Society says 5 of the dogs are healthy and old enough for adoption. They're between 1 and 5 years old. The society says there are now actually 79 dogs because 11 puppies were born since the group was taken in, and those moms and pups are in foster care right now. The police board found the dogs, the police force found the dogs in deplorable conditions during a well-being call. And finally, in sports, We the North is now She the North. The WNBA is now confirming the news CBC Sports first reported 2 weeks ago. Canada is getting a women's pro basketball team. Ithil Musa has your details.
Toronto, welcome to the W.
WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert says expansion into Canada will help the league reach new audiences. She officially announced Toronto has secured the league's 14th and first international franchise. According to the Associated Press, Kilmer Sports Ventures, owned by Canadian billionaire Larry Tannenbaum, is paying $50 million for the team. Experts say the league's move north is a big win for women's professional sport in Canada.
I think having role models in market will be of huge impact on the next generation of young athletes.
Tammy Sutton-Brown from Markham, Ontario, played in the WNBA for 12 years.
It's one thing to watch a game on TV, but to see a game live in person, there's something really special about that.
Toronto's yet-to-be-named team is scheduled to start playing in May 2026. Ithil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
And for news anytime, head on to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or use the CBC News app.
Matt Humphrey, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Back soon.
Riley Laychuk joins us now. He's our weather specialist, keeping an eye on this rainfall warning we're sitting underneath.
We are looking at some pretty considerable rain, Janet, as we get into the next day or so here in Manitoba. So expect a pretty wet Friday ahead for most of us in Manitoba. Yes, we do have a rainfall warning in place for the Red River Valley, Portage La Prairie east to the Ontario border, including the Interlake up to the Arborg region, down to the international border, and as far west as, say, Pilot Mound through Boissevain, south of Highway number 2 and east of Highway number 10 in southern Manitoba. So most of the southern part of the province, at least under this rainfall warning. We're expecting up to 50 or 60 millimeters of rain in the Red River Valley as we get into the day on Friday. Could see some gusty winds as well, up to 60 kilometers an hour. We are starting to see sort of the beginnings of that rain starting to move into extreme stream southern Manitoba, sort of the I guess ahead of the main event as we head into the afternoon hours today. So places like Emerson, for example, even as far to the west as Morden Winkler, could see a few sprinkles through the afternoon today, but most of that staying south of the border. As we get into the day on Friday, though, we do start to see that rain moving in sort of in earnest, I guess. So by the time we get to, say, midnight, we start to see sort of the leading edge of that rain moving into southern Manitoba. So by about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, we'll start to see the rain moving into southern Manitoba. Brandon picking up some showers and some heavier pockets through Emerson and into the Sprague region. Then we are kind of stuck in this main event as we get through the day Friday. We're well into it by 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, continuing as we get through the entire day on Friday and really not tapering off till we get into early Saturday morning. So a few lingering showers into the early part of Saturday. But by lunchtime, we start to see some clearing back to the west already. So expect a bit of a sunnier afternoon Saturday and much sunnier conditions Sunday into the Red River Valley. Forecast rainfall, at least the forecast modeling I'm looking at, is suggesting about 15 to 30 millimeters or so through the Westman region, places like Brandon on the edge of that 30 millimeter mark. And then Morden Winkler, Portage la Prairie, Steinbach, Sprague, Emerson looking at the higher end of that 50 to 60 millimeters. In Winnipeg, I'm saying about 35 to 40 millimeters. Could see some pockets of heavier accumulation, possibly in your backyard if we get some of these higher pockets or some of these more intense pockets of rain as we head through the day tomorrow. Today's forecast looking at partly cloudy, 13 degrees in Winnipeg, 12 in Gimli this afternoon. 13, a slim chance of some showers moving through the late afternoon for places like Melita, Morden, even as far north as Brandon, and Thompson looking at 9 degrees under a cloudy sky. We start to see some clearing, as I mentioned, on Saturday with a high of 12. Sunday, 17 degrees, maybe more showers on Monday, and back up to 22 by the time we hit next Tuesday.
Thank you so much, Riley.
No problem.
Riley Lachuk, keeping an eye on all things weather for you today. He'll be back during Up to Speed, which airs here on CBC Radio 1 between 3 and 6 p.m. And then he'll be on the CBC Newscast, which is on television at 6, but you can watch it on our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel whenever you like. Beautiful thing, being able to get stuff on demand. Manitoba and northwestern Ontario have beautiful lakes and rivers, but sadly every year we lose people to boating accidents. How can we enjoy these fabulous waterways safely? We want you to join our call-in conversation and let us know how safe you feel on Manitoba's lakes and waterways. Our live line right now, it is open to take your calls, 204-780-0893. Again, 204-780-0893. We have two guests with us today to help answer your questions and discuss this topic with us. Ian Gilson is director of the Canadian Safe Boating Council, and he joins us by Zoom. Hello, sir. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having us.
And Dr. Christopher Love is Water Smart and Safety Management Coordinator with the Life Saving Society of Manitoba. He joins me in studio. Thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Again, the number to call to talk to our experts or to share a story is 204-780-0893. If you're outside Winnipeg and would like a toll-free number, it's 1-800-268-5483. Dr. Love, you did the research that was involved in the 2024 Manitoba Drowning Report. You actually went to the medical examiner's office to do that research. What did you find?
Well, it's always sad when I have to go in to collect that data. And the report, which is available through our website if people want to look at it themselves, we've unfortunately seen an increase in the number of fatalities overall when it comes to fatal drownings here in the province of Manitoba. Our long-term 5-year average is now up to 23 deaths per year, but the last year we have stats for, which is 2021 for complete statistics, we had 25 fatalities on the water. Now that's swimming, boating, everything combined. That's an increase year over year from 2019 onwards, which we don't want to see as a trend. And specifically because we're talking boating this week, because it is National Safe Boating Awareness Week here in Canada, we've seen, unfortunately, that boating incidents are consistently stubborn with the risk factors we see in terms of how people are getting hurt and dying. And that's involving things like not wearing a life jacket when they should, and being under the influence of alcohol, being intoxicated, which are things that are very, very easy to fix. But unfortunately, people are just not heeding that currently, and we are continuing to see the tragedies.
Ian Gilson, what's your reaction to hearing what the Life Saving Society of Manitoba has found?
Actually, I'm not surprised at all by that. We have very similar statistics, and it's the sad part is all of these incidents really are preventable. If people were just a little bit more attentive on the water and didn't do things that would be considered as risky, or as Christopher said, not wearing your life jacket or boating impaired. And cold water is another issue that we find too. When the water is cold, the number of boating related incidents that result in a fatality rise significantly.
What can you do to mitigate that risk?
Well, one thing certainly is dressing for the water temperature as well as, or instead of just the air temperature, because it's definitely going to be a shock at this time of year should you fall in. And the other thing too is to understand that it takes far longer to become hypothermic than people would think. Even in ice water, if you as an adult were to fall in the water, you'd start having an instant shock, and then you'd hyperventilate for a couple of minutes. But after that, your breathing's going to return to normal again, or near normal, and you'll have about 10 minutes to self-rescue. People tend to panic when they get that initial cold shock response or the hyperventilation stage, and they're feeling that the death or drowning is imminent, and that's not necessarily the case.
Now, you mentioned people are dressing, they're not dressing for the temperature of the water. But Dr. Love, that you go out on a boat, you're not expecting to end up in the water, and it's a hot summer day. Who's going to want to wear clothing that'll keep them warm in water?
It's understandable. We get that comment. I'm sure Ian has heard that same comment himself. Yeah, we hear that a lot, but you have to be aware that, Manitoba and across Canada, all of our water, generally speaking, all of our lakes, rivers, streams, they are cold water year round. And we define cold water basically as 25 degrees Celsius or less. But when you think your body temperature is 37, that's a big difference. And you're going to have that cold shock that Ian was just talking about. In the middle of the summer, when it's a 35 degrees Celsius day, yeah, that feels refreshing when you fall in. That's why we cool down and everything. But if it's a slightly cooler day, or we're on the shoulder seasons like spring and fall, like we are right now, you fall in. If you prepared for that air temperature versus the water temperature, that cold shock's going to hit right away. The panic is going to set in, like Ian was saying in the introduction. And you can drown in that first 10 to 15 seconds if you haven't prepared. And that's preparing for the water temperature, as Ian said, but it's, again, going back to wearing your life jacket. The simple fact of wearing your life jacket in advance means you're floating, your face is above the surface, so you're not going to be getting water into your airway. You're not going to get it into your nose. It's not going to block anything. It's not going to flood your lungs. So you'll be able to breathe, and that cold shock, that hyperventilation, it'll die down. And then you can figure out, okay, what do I do next? Can I save myself? Do I need to call for help? Are there friends, family nearby who are going to be able to rescue me now that they know what's going on?
I know we have a lot of experienced boaters out there and people who spend a lot of time around water, and we'd love to hear from you today. How is it that you keep yourself feeling safe? How do you feel comfortable with your children around the water? And how do you maintain the rules on your boat? Are you strict with people wearing life jackets? Let us know what you've experienced. 204-780-0893. Are there areas, waterways, where you feel safer than others? For example, I know when I was growing up, of course, water safety, I grew up in the Maritimes, was something that was kind of drilled into our head. It was considered a mandatory life-saving thing. We're talking about boating safety specifically, but Ian Gilson, for boaters, how often do you think that people who get their boating licenses are actually comfortable swimmers?
Well, actually, it's interesting because as Canadians, we're noticing that there are a number of people who immigrate to Canada from other countries where there isn't the water and therefore there isn't the emphasis on learning to swim. But they can come here and see how much fun people are having out on the water. And let's say they even start by going to a sporting goods store like, I don't know, just anywhere like Canadian Tire where you can go and buy a canoe or a kayak and then just head out on the water without any education and not learning how to swim. That becomes a dangerous combination.
What would your thoughts be on that, Christopher Love?
I agree with Ian there. We unfortunately do see in our drowning statistics that newcomers to Canada, new immigrants are at higher risk of ending up in trouble. And that's swimming, boating, other water activities for many of the reasons he mentioned, as well as others. Sometimes people come from areas with water, but just no water safety culture for their country. And so they just don't understand that as well. So that's a concern that way. And yeah, again, we would be encouraging everyone to learn to swim. Learning to swim, it's a life skill. It's a skill for life, but it's a life skill that can save your life long term. We understand that, in Manitoba, since the pandemic, access has been a concern. Lots of people are worried about getting into lessons because we had a reduction in supply because of the shutdowns. That's
also,
something to be aware of.
There was a shortage the city of Winnipeg had in even lifeguards.
Yes. Now that is according to the information we have, our training statistics that we see, because we work with all the pools around the province to get training happening. Our statistics showing we're pretty much back to a normal level, at least in the number of people who are taking training and have taken training over the last year or so to be able to staff those pools. Whether or not they're employed, that you'd have to check with the pools because we don't handle that side of things. But the level of training is back there. But yeah, people still need to reach out, get into those spots for those lessons. And if you're not getting in, ask, get on waiting lists. If you are going to go boating, even if you haven't learned to swim yet, which, we want people to enjoy themselves. We don't want to scare people. We want to say just, lock yourself in your home, never go near the water because we have lots of water to enjoy. But take the safety precautions. So, okay, you got your boating pleasure craft operator card, your boater's license, as people usually refer to it. You've got your boat. It's prepared. Do you have all the safety equipment? Are you wearing that life jacket? Have you told someone where you're going so that if you get into trouble and you don't come back on time, that some action is going to be called? And preferably, are you going out with someone who does know what they're doing and also maybe has some swimming, life-saving, or rescue skills?
Ian Gilson, if you were to go out on a boat and have an incident, something goes wrong, how long do people have to grab their life jackets? Because I bet you a lot of people think, well, if something happens, it's right here. I can put it on quickly.
Well, what we see is you'll get into a situation where, let's say you're fishing and you're concentrating on the tip of your rod or a bobber to see if there's a fish that's going to grab onto your bait. And you don't notice a wake from a cruiser that went by behind you 5 minutes ago that cast a huge wake. And it's coming towards you silently from behind. It hits you, knocks you overboard, and takes you and your life jacket, or takes the boat and the life jacket away so you can't reach them. There you are in the middle of the lake without any flotation.
What do you say to people who say, I don't want to wear my life jacket, it's uncomfortable?
Well, you'll change your mind if you're finding you're out there in the middle of the lake, like I say, without any flotation. And people unfortunately say, "Hey, I've been boating for 20 years. Nothing's happened to me yet. Why should I even consider that there's going to be something that will happen to me in the near future?"
What are the regulations in Manitoba? What are you supposed to have? And what can happen and how are those regulations enforced? What kind of fines are in place? For example?
So it's national regulations. Transport Canada sets the safe boating regulations, so it's the same across the country. And we've been talking a lot about life jackets here. The rules federally are currently you must have an appropriate sized and fitting life jacket for every individual in your boat. So if you've got 3 adults, 2 kids, and a baby, you have to have 6 life jackets in total. 3 of them would need to be appropriate adult sizes, 2 children, and the smallest infant size available to fit that infant. Those just have to be on board under the regulations, and they have to be easily accessible to the individual so that they could theoretically grab them. As Ian has just set out in the last example we were talking about, though, once an emergency happens, it's usually far too late. I've had to go into that office of the chief medical examiner, look at the records, and there are many, many cases where, the wave hits or somebody falls overboard, winds blowing, whatever it is, they go one direction, the life jacket goes the other direction. It's cold water. The cold water saps their strength. They can't swim back to the boat. They can't swim over to the life jacket. Or maybe they can get to the life jacket, but once you're in the water, I mean, I'm a trained lifeguard swimming instructor. I've been doing this for over 30 years. I know the skill, but even I struggle with putting a life jacket on in the water because they're designed to be put on when you're safe, dry, and in a stable position. And so that you can fit them properly, so they're going to float you properly. Now, this is all assuming, I've given this nice story. That's assuming you're still conscious. What if you hit your head when you're falling out of the boat? It doesn't matter how good a swimmer you are. It doesn't matter what model of life jacket you have. You're unconscious. You can't grab it. You can't put it on. You're going to sink. You're unfortunately going to drown at that point in time with no intervention. And going back to your previous point, asking about, well, what did they say? Well, I don't want to wear my life jacket. It's uncomfortable. Once upon a time, again, we're in the same ballpark for age here. Yeah, I remember the old Kapok life jackets that were a pain to wear. We've come a long way since then. There are proper styles for every activity you can think of on the water. You can have a different vest for water skiing versus wakeboarding versus fishing versus hunting. A lot of the new inflatable styles, they fit around your neck. And, I'm just thinking I probably should have worn mine today for an example for you. But I can wear one for hours and you don't even feel that it's on. But as soon as you need it, it's there and it's going to work.
I'm curious. I've got a question to throw out to the listeners. 204-780-0893. Right now, the federal regulations say that the life jackets must be on board, one appropriately sized for everyone on board. Should that regulation change? And should it be you must be wearing one? Call in. Let me know. Yes or no. Do you agree? 204-780-0893. What do you think? What would you say to that, Christopher Love?
Our advice is, yes, you should always be wearing.
But do you think the federal regulation needs to change before people will follow that rule?
We're in constant consultation with them, and we have been supporting at the national level. There has been an initiative to at least get children required to wear, and we've been working on that or helping with that. And we'd love to see what the federal government would come up with for everybody, because it is, in many ways, it's thinking about, it's the same as wearing a seatbelt in your car.
We were talking a moment ago about the need for swimming lessons for people to learn how to swim. How active is the Life Saving Society in initiating contact with newcomer communities and encouraging swimming lessons?
We actually do have an outreach program. We are fortunate. We have a little bit of provincial funding that allows us to reach out to all the newcomer language training schools in the province, and they are given the option of inviting us in for presentations. Annually, we do somewhere between 30 and 50 presentations and hit, again, varies from year to year, but between 1,000 and 2,000 newcomers to the province of Manitoba in terms of providing a safety education, including why learning to swim is important and where they can potentially access swimming lessons within the community that they are within.
What's your final message for Manitobans and folks in northwestern Ontario who are listening today about water safety?
I would say, please think about safety before you go out on the water. Consider layers of safety. So it's not just one thing, it should be multiple things. And because it is Canadian Safe Boating Awareness Week this week, remember our 5 key boating safety steps, which is wear your life jacket, do not boat while intoxicated, be prepared, you and your boat. So have your safety equipment and make sure your boat's in good repair. Take a pleasure craft operator course or a boater's course, and be aware of those dangers of cold water, or be cold water safe.
And Ian Gilson, who we lost there on Zoom for a moment, but he's back just in time to say goodbye. Your final words of safety to folks in Northwestern Ontario and in Manitoba who are listening.
Sorry about the interruption. Basically, just get out there and have a good time. We at the Canadian State Boating Council really want people to get out there and enjoy the water, but just do so responsibly and don't take any unnecessary risks.
Like drinking.
Like kids sit on the bow of the boat with their feet dangling over. Don't speed after dark. Don't be towing people without a spotter, or towing them after dusk, because they just can't be seen, and that's a huge problem.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, Ian Gilson from the Canadian Safe Boating Council, and Dr. Christopher Love as well from Life Saving Society of Manitoba, our Water Smart and Safety Management Coordinator. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
Let's go now to a song by the Good Lovelies.
Heard it on the radio. There's a show downtown. Do you wanna go? We'll stay out late and forget the news. Darling, let's get on our dancing shoes. I am young at heart, young at heart, young at heart. We can't pretend that we're 21 and lose ourselves till the morning comes. Sunlight streaming through the window pane. Waking tired, but alive this way. I am young at heart, young at heart, young at heart. I am young at heart, young at heart, young at heart. I am young at heart, young at heart, young at heart. I am young at heart, young at heart. Years flying by with the babies. They keep me on my toes, bring me to my knees. Though I wouldn't change a single thing, the weight of some days still ruins me. I am young at heart, young at heart, young at heart. I am young at heart.
The Good Lovelies with Young at Heart off their 2023 album, We Will Never Be the Same. Faith Wendall joins us now. Hello, Faith.
Hello, Janet. Our next guest on the program this afternoon, when they think about being young, doesn't bring the greatest memories, because when they were in El Salvador and it was time for prom, they couldn't be themselves. So they have decided to put together a Pride prom as we head into Pride Month. So we're going to speak with them about why they've decided to make that space available to folks out there.
Thank you so much, Faith. That'll be a really interesting conversation.
Thank you.
Faith Wendall hosts Up to Speed, which airs here between 3 and 6 p.m. on CBC Radio 1. 89.3 FM, 990 AM, but you know that because you're already listening. Maybe you're listening on the app or watching on YouTube. Remember our calling conversation? We'd love to have you join at any point. If you think, oh, I should have asked this, or hey, why don't you do a call in about that? Give us a call. Let us know. 204-788-3797. I want to thank Corey Funk. I want to thank Dylan Longhurst for their help today. Thanks to Riley Lachuk and to Matt Humphreys, and to you for listening. I'm Janet Stewart. We'll chat tomorrow. Coming up next, Writers and Company.